My wife betrayed me with my own brother while my kids helped hide it for 2 years, so I stayed silent, let them think I was weak, and made one calm decision that began quietly destroying everything they thought they controlled. I'm writing this from my cabin in Montana, 1,800 miles from the life I torched 6 months ago. Tomorrow morning, my ex-wife will wake up in her studio apartment to an eviction notice. My brother will discover his truck's been repossessed. And my kids, they'll finally understand that Daddy isn't as stupid as they thought. Some of you are probably thinking this is another revenge fantasy. Trust me, I wish it was. I wish I could close this laptop, walk back into my old life, and pretend none of this happened. But reality has a funny way of forcing your hand when the people you love most decide to betray you in the most spectacular way possible. But let me tell you how a blue-collar kid from Detroit built an empire only to watch his own family try to steal it from under him. Spoiler alert, they picked the wrong guy to mess with. I'm Jake, 41 years old. I grew up poor as dirt in the Motor City. Dad worked the line at Ford until his back gave out when I was 15. Mom cleaned offices at night to keep food on the table. Real heartwarming stuff, right? I started working in commercial plumbing at 16. What was supposed to be a summer job turned into my life's calling. By 22, I had my master plumber's license. By 25, I'd started my own commercial plumbing and HVAC business with $5,000 borrowed from my dad's retirement fund, because apparently I was ambitious enough to think I could make something of myself. How naive. Met Sarah at a trade show in 2001. She was 23, fresh out of college, working in sales for a plumbing supply company. Blonde, petite, had this way of making you feel like the most important person in the room when she wanted something. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Big mistake number 1. I thought her expensive tastes would settle down after marriage. Spoiler alert, they didn't. They never do. Sarah never worked a real job after our son Marcus was born in 2005. Said she wanted to be a present mother. What she really wanted was to spend my money. Designer clothes, luxury cars, country club memberships. I busted my rear 70 hours a week to fund her lifestyle because I thought that's what good husbands did. Classic mistake, really. But hey, I was young and stupid. By 2010, my business was pulling in $3.2 million annually. We had 27 employees, owned our equipment outright, and I just bought Sarah her dream house, a 4,200 square foot colonial in the suburbs, for $680,000. Our daughter Emma was born that year. Life looked perfect from the outside. That's when I made my second big mistake. I hired my younger brother David as my operations manager. David was 35, 3 years younger than me, and had been bouncing between jobs his whole life. Smooth talker who always had an excuse for why his latest venture failed. Lost a sales job because his manager was threatened by his success. Got fired from a construction company because they didn't appreciate his innovative ideas. Every failure was someone else's fault, never his own. I felt sorry for him. Our parents always compared him to me, and I thought giving him a real opportunity would help him finally get his life together. Mom used to say things like, "Why can't you be more like your brother Jake?" And Jake never gave us this kind of trouble. I figured if I could just give David a chance to prove himself, maybe he'd finally find his footing. Oh, the irony. I was so busy trying to be the good brother that I missed all the warning signs. David was good with clients. I'll give him that. He could charm anyone into signing a contract. Had this way of making people feel like they were his best friend within 5 minutes of meeting him. But he was lazy when it came to actual work, would disappear for hours at a time, claiming he was developing leads or maintaining client relationships. I carried the technical side while he handled sales and customer relations. His wife, Lisa, was sweet, quiet, hardworking, the kind of woman who deserved better than what she got. They had 2 young kids, and I convinced myself I was helping family by giving David stability. For 8 years, I carried that business while David took credit for the sales he closed. Sarah spent money like it was going out of style. The kids grew up thinking Daddy was an ATM. I convinced myself this was success, providing for my family, building something lasting. Then 2 years ago, everything started falling apart. And by falling apart, I mean my family decided to stab me in the back while I was working my tail off to support them. First sign something was wrong, Sarah joined an expensive yoga studio. $200 a month for hot yoga and meditation. Started buying athletic wear that cost more than most people's rent. Lululemon everything. Sports bras for $70. Leggings for $130. Yoga mats that cost more than my work boots. Said she was finding herself. How original. A 40-year-old suburban mom having a spiritual awakening. I'm sure that story has never been told before. The yoga studio became her second home. Morning classes, evening classes, weekend workshops. She'd come home glowing, talking about her practice and how much better she felt about herself. Started doing these cleanse diets, buying expensive organic everything, reading self-help books about authentic living and breaking free from limiting beliefs. I should have paid more attention to that last part. David began showing up at the house more often, family visits that happened when I was out on job sites. Sarah would mention casually that David stopped by to check on us or discuss work stuff. Oh, David came by around lunch. We went over the Henderson project details. Or your brother was here earlier. He wanted to make sure we were doing okay while you're working so much. Always had a reason. Always perfectly innocent. I was working 12-hour days trying to keep up with demand, so I appreciated that David was looking out for my family. What a fool I was. The kids started acting differently too. Marcus, now 17, would get nervous when I came home unexpectedly. Emma, 14, began spending more time in her room. Family dinners became tense affairs where everyone seemed to be walking on eggshells. Sarah's spending escalated dramatically. New car, a $65,000 BMW X5, because her 3-year-old Mercedes wasn't reliable anymore. Never mind that the Mercedes had only 35,000 miles and had never given us a single problem. Kitchen renovation, $45,000 for granite countertops and custom cabinets because our perfectly functional kitchen was dated and embarrassing when friends came over. Wardrobe updates became a monthly occurrence. Designer handbags that cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Shoes that she wore once and forgot about. Jewelry for special occasions that never seemed to happen, or at least never seemed to include me. Spa weekends with her sister became spa weeks at luxury resorts. The credit card bills were staggering. $8,000 one month at Nordstrom, $12,000 the next month, spread across Saks, Neiman Marcus, and boutiques I'd never heard of. When I questioned the expenses, she'd explode like I'd insulted her entire family. I gave up my career for this family. I could have been somebody if I hadn't sacrificed everything to raise your children and support your dreams. The irony was that her career had been an entry-level sales job at a plumbing supply company. She acted like she'd given up being CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I deserve to have nice things. All my friends have nice things. You're being controlling and cheap. The arguments always ended the same way, with me apologizing and her getting whatever she wanted, plus a little extra for the emotional distress I'd caused by questioning her spending. Because apparently questioning where our money goes makes me the bad guy. David's behavior changed too. He started making comments about how I was working too hard and should enjoy life more. Suggested I take more time off, let him handle more of the day-to-day operations. His wife, Lisa, seemed uncomfortable around Sarah at family gatherings, but I figured it was typical sister-in-law tension. The intimacy dried up. Sarah claimed she was tired, stressed, going through hormonal changes. Meanwhile, she looked better than she had in years, working out 6 days a week, getting facials, dressing like she was trying to impress someone. Gee, I wonder who that could have been. I threw myself deeper into work, figured if I could just build the business bigger, make more money, everything would stabilize. Added an electrical division, bought 3 new service trucks, hired 8 more technicians. Revenue hit $4.8 million in 2022. None of it mattered. The more successful I became, the more distant my family grew. It's almost like they were planning something behind my back. 3 months ago, Emma asked to borrow my iPad for a school project, said hers was charging. I went to her room to grab it from her desk and knocked over a stack of textbooks. Behind them was an old Android phone I didn't recognize. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought him back. The phone was unlocked. Recent messages showed it belonged to Sarah, apparently her burner phone for coordinating with David. What I found in those messages destroyed 20 years of marriage and 8 years of trusting my brother. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning my complete destruction. 2 years of messages between Sarah and David, detailed discussions about how I was holding them back and how they deserved to be together, plans about what they'd do once I was out of the picture, conversations about my workaholic personality and how I'd never see it coming because I was always too trusting. Sarah called me that stubborn plumber in multiple messages. Said I was too stupid to notice what's happening under my own nose and too boring to keep any woman interested long term. David referred to me as the money machine, good for funding their lifestyle, but not smart enough to realize I was being used, One message thread that particularly stung was from last Christmas. While I was working an emergency call on Christmas Eve, a burst pipe at a nursing home that would have left elderly residents without heat, they were texting about how pathetic it was that I chose work over family and how I deserved to be alone. I was literally out in freezing weather on my hands and knees in a crawl space making sure old people didn't freeze to death, and they were mocking me for it. Well, isn't that just precious? The photos were worse. Sarah in lingerie I'd never seen. David in my office after hours. Both of them in my bed. The bed I'd bought with money from 16-hour days and bloodied knuckles. But the worst part, the kids knew. Marcus had been covering for them, deleting security footage from our home system when David came over during work hours. I'd installed that system to protect my family, and my own son was using it to betray me. Emma created elaborate stories about Sarah's whereabouts. Mom's at book club. Mom went shopping with Aunt Linda. Mom's having coffee with Mrs. Henderson from down the street. All lies, all coordinated, all delivered with the innocent smile of a 14-year-old who should have been worried about algebra homework, not covering up her mother's adultery. They had a group chat. Sarah, David, Marcus, and Emma, code names for everything. I was the boss. David was Uncle D. Their meetings were study sessions. My business trips were golden opportunities. My late nights at work were free passes. The messages from my children hurt worse than anything Sarah and David had written. Marcus asking, "Is the coast clear?" When I was running late from a job site. Emma sending all clear. He is working late again when I called to say I'd be home after 8 p.m. My own children were accomplices in my wife's affair with my brother. Let that sink in for a moment. These were kids I'd taught to ride bikes, helped with homework, taken to baseball games and dance recitals. I'd worked myself to exhaustion to give them everything they wanted, and they repaid me by helping destroy our family. There were messages about my personal habits, my appearance, even intimate details about our marriage that Sarah had no right to share. They mocked my work clothes, laughed about my boring stories from job sites, made fun of my attempts to spend family time by suggesting weekend activities. One particularly painful thread was from Father's Day last year. While I was grilling burgers for what I thought was a nice family celebration, they were texting about how fake the whole thing felt and counting down the minutes until they could get back to normal. I'd been so proud that day, thinking about how blessed I was to have such a close family. I sat in Emma's room for 2 hours, screenshotting everything, bank account information they'd been discussing, even their timeline for getting me out of their lives. They'd been planning to push me toward a breakdown so Sarah could divorce me and take half of everything. Then she and David could be together openly. The final message I screenshotted was from Sarah to David, sent just 3 days earlier. "Jake is getting suspicious about the expenses. We need to be more careful. Maybe it's time to make our move." They were planning to destroy me financially and personally, make me lose everything I'd built, then swoop in to take control. When I finally stood up, my hands weren't shaking. I felt eerily calm, like everything suddenly made perfect sense. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, walked downstairs, and found my family eating dinner. Sarah smiled brightly and asked about my day. David was there drinking my soda, joking about a client who'd tried to negotiate our prices down. "Clients think plumbing work is easy," he said, laughing. "They don't understand the skill involved." "No," I agreed, looking directly at him. "They really don't." Marcus asked if I could help him with his college applications that weekend. Emma wanted money for a school ski trip. Sarah mentioned she'd booked us a dinner reservation for Saturday night at the new steakhouse downtown. I played along perfectly, smiled, nodded, made plans I knew I'd never keep. Inside, I was already planning their destruction. That night, I started planning the most important project of my life: the systematic demolition of everyone who'd betrayed me. Step 1 was intelligence gathering. I couldn't let them know I knew, so I had to be smart about collecting evidence. Over the next month, I documented everything. Used my work phone to photograph the burner phone's contents every time I could get access to it. Set up a hidden camera in my home office after noticing David had been going through my files. Turned out he'd been photographing financial documents and client contracts. Created a detailed timeline of their affair using credit card statements and security footage they'd missed. The footage was particularly damning. David's car in my driveway at odd hours. Him entering through the back door like he owned the place. Sarah greeting him in clothing she'd change out of before I got home. Sarah made it easy. Her arrogance was staggering. She'd book hotel rooms on our joint credit card, claiming they were for girls' weekends that never included any girls. The hotel charges were always for single occupancy, always on days when David had also taken personal time from work. She bought lingerie and charged it to our account. Lingerie I never saw her wear. Even got David expensive gifts and listed them as family presents on the credit card statements. One particularly insulting purchase was a $300 silk tie she bought him for Boss's Day. Apparently, I was footing the bill for gifts to celebrate my brother taking over my role in more ways than one, because apparently I was too stupid to read credit card statements. The woman who'd called me a financial genius for building a multi-million-dollar business somehow thought I couldn't figure out basic math. David was equally sloppy. Used my company vehicles for personal trips to meet Sarah. I had GPS tracking on all the trucks so I could see exactly where he went and when. Charged romantic dinners to his company credit card. Dinners that happened on the same night Sarah claimed to be at book club or yoga workshops. Had lengthy personal phone calls during work hours that my office phone system recorded. Even used company letterhead for personal notes. I found copies in his desk when I came in early one Saturday. Love letters written on my business stationery, using equipment I'd paid for during hours I was paying him to work. The kid's involvement was the most painful to document. Marcus had been deleting security footage for 18 months. I recovered most of it from the cloud backup he didn't know existed. Emma had created fake social media posts to give Sarah alibis. Photos from months earlier reposted with current dates to make it look like Sarah was at various events when she was actually with David. My son had learned to lie like a professional. My daughter had become a master manipulator at 14. Their mother had turned them into criminals. Step 2 was financial preparation. I couldn't just disappear like some Reddit fantasy. I had employees, contracts, legal obligations, but I could restructure everything to protect what I'd built. Started by consulting with 3 different attorneys. Learned that adultery still matters in our state, especially when it involves family members and financial fraud. The evidence I'd gathered wasn't just proof of cheating, it was proof of conspiracy. Created a new LLC in Wyoming, completely separate from my main business. Started moving personal assets into the new entity. Sold my classic Mustang and motorcycle privately. Deposited the cash in a new account at a different bank. Liquidated some investments, claiming I wanted to diversify when Sarah asked. She didn't ask often. Sarah had stopped paying attention to our finances years earlier, except when she wanted to spend money. As long as her credit cards worked and her shopping budget remained unlimited, she didn't care where the money came from. Step 3 was business restructuring. I couldn't just fire my brother without cause. He wasn't technically an employee in the traditional sense, more like a partner, but I could document his failures and create a paper trail that would justify removing him. Promoted 2 of my most trusted senior technicians to operations managers. Started giving them more responsibility, better pay, equity stakes in future projects. Built redundancy into every system so the company could function without David. Meanwhile, I documented every one of David's failures, his habit of disappearing during important client meetings, his inability to handle technical aspects of the business, his tendency to make promises to clients without consulting me first. I also discovered David had been skimming, small amounts but consistent, using company credit cards for personal expenses, claiming fake business meals, even billing personal car repairs to the company. I let it continue while documenting everything. Step 4 was the hardest part, pretending everything was normal, while my family planned my destruction. For 2 months, I lived a double life. During the day, I was Jake, successful business owner and devoted family man. At night, I was a man preparing for war. Sarah's behavior became increasingly bold. She'd come home from yoga with disheveled hair and suspicious marks on her neck. Started receiving expensive gifts, jewelry, handbags, perfume that she claimed were from her sister or girls' trip splurges. The receipts I found showed David had bought everything. She became more demanding and cruel, complained constantly about our house being outdated compared to her friends' homes. Wanted a kitchen renovation that would cost $90,000. Insisted we needed a vacation home in Colorado because successful people have multiple properties. When I suggested we should be more conservative with spending, she exploded. I didn't marry you to live like we're poor. I could have married anyone, but I chose you because I thought you had ambition. Anyone? I asked. Men with real money were interested in me, she said coldly. Investment bankers, doctors, lawyers. I settled for a tradesman because I thought you'd become something more. A tradesman. After I'd built a multi-million-dollar business, bought her everything she'd ever wanted, and worked myself half to death to fund her lifestyle, I was still just a tradesman in her mind. How charming. David's mask slipped too. Started making comments about how I was holding everyone back with my old-fashioned methods. Suggested we should expand faster, take on more debt, hire cheaper workers. His ideas would have bankrupted us within 2 years. He also began acting like he owned half the business. Jake, I need you to handle the Johnson site personally. I've got meetings all afternoon. Jake, can you stay late and finish the inventory? I promised Lisa I'd be home for dinner. The meetings were with Sarah. The dinner with Lisa was actually dinner with Sarah. I knew this because I'd started tracking his location using the company vehicle's GPS system. Marcus started getting more aggressive about college planning. Dad, I need you to co-sign for student loans. The tuition at state is $28,000 a year. What he didn't know was that I'd already discovered he'd been accepted to 3 different schools but was getting advice from David about which one to choose. Emma became manipulative in ways that shocked me. Daddy, Mom says you've been stressed about money. Maybe you should retire early and let Uncle David run the business. At 14, she was pushing her father to give up everything he'd built. The final straw came 6 weeks ago. I came home early from a job site due to equipment problems and found David's car in my driveway. Not hidden, not parked discreetly, right in my driveway like he belonged there. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes listening to music and checking emails, giving them time to realize I was home. When I walked into my house, David was fully dressed, sitting at my kitchen table with Sarah, having coffee. Emma was doing homework nearby. Hey bro, David said casually, just stopped by to check on Sarah and the kids. You know how Lisa worries when I'm working late. Sarah was wearing a silk robe at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Her hair was wet from a shower. She looked me straight in the eye and smiled. Honey, you're home early. Everything okay? The audacity was breathtaking. They were so confident in my stupidity that they didn't even bother with a good cover story. Just some equipment issues, I said. Nothing major. Good, David said, standing up. Well, I should get going. Thanks for the coffee, Sarah. And don't worry about what we discussed. Everything will work out. He hugged me goodbye. Actually hugged me before leaving. His wedding ring was in his pants pocket. Sarah's lipstick was slightly smudged. Emma looked up from her homework and smiled innocently. How was work today, Daddy? That night, I made my final decision. They weren't just cheating on me, they were insulting my intelligence while they did it. My own brother thought I was too stupid, too trusting, too pathetic to ever figure it out. Time to show them how wrong they were. Last week, I put my plan into motion. The beauty of running a technical business is that everything has to be perfectly timed and executed. One mistake and the whole project fails. Same principle applies to destroying people who've betrayed you. Phase 1. Financial devastation. I'd spent months moving assets out of joint accounts and into protected entities. Sarah never noticed because I maintained the same amount in our checking account. I just replaced our savings with debt, took out a business line of credit secured by company assets, used it to fund her spending while moving our actual money to safety. Monday morning, I closed all joint credit cards and bank accounts. Sarah discovered this when her card was declined at Nordstrom. She called me screaming. What the heck did you do to our accounts? Consolidated them for better rates. I lied smoothly. New cards should arrive Wednesday. They didn't arrive Wednesday because I'd never ordered them. Phase 2, destroying David. Tuesday, I called an emergency meeting with my attorney and accountant. Presented them with evidence of David's embezzlement and misuse of company resources. Had them draft termination papers and a demand for repayment of stolen funds. David showed up to work Wednesday morning to find his access codes changed, his office cleaned out, and a security guard waiting to escort him off the property. His company vehicle was in the parking lot with a repo man attaching it to a tow truck. He called me 17 times. I answered on the 18th call. What the heck, Jake? You can't just kick me out. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said calmly. Check your termination letter. It includes documentation of $47,000 in embezzled funds and misused company resources. You can't prove anything. I have receipts, David. Photos, credit card statements, GPS logs from company vehicles. Should I send copies to Lisa? Or would you prefer to tell her yourself that you've been stealing from your brother to fund your affair with his wife? The line went quiet. You're insane, he whispered. No, I'm thorough. Oh, and David, the IRS will be contacting you about unreported income. Might want to get a good accountant. Phase 3. The children learn consequences. Marcus's college fund was in my name only, a 529 plan I'd been funding for 12 years. Wednesday afternoon, I liquidated it and transferred the money to my protected LLC. $180,000 gone in one transaction. Emma's car fund got the same treatment. She'd been expecting a new BMW for her 16th birthday next month. That $45,000 just became operating capital for my new business venture. Thursday morning, I canceled their cell phone plans, removed them from my health insurance as dependents, and closed the credit card accounts they used for gas and expenses. Marcus discovered this when he tried to buy lunch at school, and his card was declined. Emma found out when her phone was shut off during third period. They both called Sarah, panicked. Sarah called me furious. "You're punishing the children for our problems." "I'm teaching them that actions have consequences," I replied. "They chose to help you betray me. Now they get to see what life looks like without my financial support." "They're just kids." Marcus is 17, old enough to delete security footage and lie to his father. Emma is 14, old enough to create fake alibis for her mother's affair. If they're old enough to commit crimes, they're old enough to face justice. Sarah hung up on me. An hour later, I received text from Marcus. "Dad, please call me. I need to explain. I didn't call back." Phase 4. Sarah's reality check. Friday morning was beautiful. I woke up early, made coffee, and drove to work like any other day. Left Sarah sleeping in our bed, the bed where she'd been intimate with my brother dozens of times while I worked to pay for her lifestyle. At exactly 9 a.m., while Sarah was at her yoga class, the moving company arrived at our house. I'd hired them to remove and store all of my personal belongings, furniture I'd bought before marriage, tools, electronics, my clothes, anything that was legally mine. I also had them remove everything I'd bought for the kids. Their bedroom furniture, computers, gaming systems, sports equipment, all purchased with my money, all technically my property. They were efficient. By noon, the house looked like it had been burglarized. Sarah came home to empty rooms and a note on the kitchen counter. "I know everything. Divorce papers will be served Monday. Don't contact me directly. All communication through attorneys only." My phone started ringing immediately. I was already 200 miles away, driving toward my new life. That was 3 months ago. I'm writing this final chapter from my cabin in Montana, where I've been doing specialized HVAC installations for luxury mountain homes. The work is challenging, the pay is excellent, and nobody here knows about my past. My attorney handled the divorce proceedings. With the evidence I'd gathered, it was basically unopposed. Sarah got exactly what she was entitled to under state law. Nothing more, nothing less. The house was sold to pay off the debts she'd racked up. Remember, I'd replaced our savings with borrowed money. After legal fees and debt settlement, she walked away with about $15,000. David's life imploded completely. His wife, Lisa, divorced him when she discovered the affair and the embezzlement. She moved back to her hometown with their kids. The IRS investigation I'd triggered uncovered 3 years of tax evasion. He's currently facing federal charges and owes over $200,000 in back taxes and penalties. He tried to start his own plumbing business, but couldn't get bonded due to his legal problems. Last I heard, he was working as a day laborer for $15 an hour. The kids learned what life looks like without daddy's money. Marcus had to take out massive student loans to attend community college instead of the 4-year university he'd planned on. Emma got a part-time job at a fast food restaurant to pay for her own phone and clothes. But here's where the story gets really interesting. 2 weeks ago, I received a phone call from Sarah. She'd somehow tracked down my new number, probably hired a private investigator with money she couldn't afford to spend. "Jake, please, I need to talk to you." I almost hung up, but curiosity won. "You have 5 minutes. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, crying. "I was confused, going through some kind of midlife crisis. I never meant for things to go so far for 2 years. I know how it looks, but I do love you. I always loved you. David convinced me that you didn't appreciate me, that you were holding me back. I see now that he was just using me. Oh, how the tables have turned. What do you want, Sarah?" "I want my family back. I want to come home." I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Home to what? The house is sold. The kids hate you for involving them in your lies. I've started a new life 1,800 miles away. I'll move anywhere. I'll do anything. Please, Jake. I can't survive on my own. You should have thought about that before you called me that stubborn plumber in your text messages to my brother." Long silence. "You saw those?" "I saw everything, Sarah. Every photo, every message, every plan you made to destroy me. You didn't just cheat. You conspired with my own brother to steal my life. I was angry when I wrote those things. I didn't mean them. Yes, you did. You meant every word. You married a tradesman thinking you could change him into something else. And when that didn't happen, you decided to trade him in for his brother. More crying. What about the kids? They need their father. The kids chose their side. They spent 2 years lying to my face, helping you destroy our family. Marcus is an adult now. He can take care of himself. Emma will learn what it means to have integrity, even if it's the hard way. Jake, please. I'm working at Target now. I can barely make rent. My friends won't speak to me. My own family thinks I'm disgusting. I have nothing. Good, I said. Now you know how I felt when I discovered my wife and my brother had spent 2 years planning to destroy everything I'd built. I'll sign any prenup you want. I'll give up all rights to your assets. I just want a chance to make this right. There's nothing to make right, Sarah. We're done. We were done the moment you decided to sleep with my brother in my bed. What am I supposed to do? The same thing I did when I was 16 and had nothing. Work. Figure it out. Build something with your own hands instead of trying to steal what other people have built. I hung up and blocked the number. 2 days later, Marcus called from a number I didn't recognize. Dad, please. Mom told me she talked to you. I know you hate us, but we're desperate. I don't hate you, Marcus. Hate requires caring about someone. I'm indifferent to you. I know I messed up. I know I shouldn't have helped Mom hide things from you, but I was scared. She said if you found out, you'd divorce her and we'd lose everything. So instead, you helped her plan to destroy me first. I didn't understand what was really happening. I thought I was protecting the family by deleting security footage and lying to your face for 2 years. I was just a kid. You were old enough to commit crimes, Marcus. You were old enough to look me in the eye and lie. You were old enough to help your mother and my brother destroy me. Dad, I can't afford college. The loans aren't enough. Emma's struggling in school because she has to work. Mom can barely pay rent. Sounds like a personal problem. We're your family. No, you're not. My family wouldn't have spent 2 years plotting against me. My family wouldn't have called me stupid behind my back. My family wouldn't have helped someone else steal from me. What do you want us to do? Beg? I don't want you to do anything, Marcus. I want you to leave me alone and figure out your own lives. I'm not your safety net anymore. Fine, he said angrily. But don't expect us to ever forgive you for abandoning us. I'm not the one who needs forgiveness, I replied and hung up. Yesterday, Emma tried a different approach. She sent me a handwritten letter through my attorney. Smart girl, figuring out how to reach me when everything else was blocked. The letter was 2 pages of apologies, regrets, and pleas for help. She claimed she was only 12 when it started and didn't understand what was happening. Said she thought she was helping her mom be happier while I was always working. Asked if I could help them find jobs or get back on their feet. I read that letter 3 times. Then, I put it in my fireplace and watched it burn. Here's what people don't understand about betrayal. It's not just about the cheating or lying. It's about the fundamental disrespect. Sarah didn't just sleep with David. She made me a fool in my own home. My kids didn't just keep secrets. They actively participated in humiliating their father. They thought I was too stupid to figure it out, too attached to them to ever walk away. They were wrong on all counts.